If someone can't stop thinking about you, they don't announce it, they leak it. And most people miss those leaks because they're waiting for confidence, not studying the nervous system. Today, you're going to see 9 hidden signs that reveal when attraction has moved past interest and into imagination, the kind that runs on repeat even when you're not there. If you're picking up what's being laid down so far, pause for a second, engage with this, and keep listening because the remaining signs are quieter but far more revealing. And once you see them, you won't unsee them. Subtle attention leaks reveal internal focus before conscious intent because attention is the first resource the mind reallocates when someone becomes mentally significant. And unlike words or planned actions, attention is difficult to police. When a person starts fantasizing, the brain begins running background processes that repeatedly return to the same subject, and those returns create behavioral spillover. This spillover shows up in where the eyes go first, how quickly someone orients toward you in a room, and how often their focus drifts back even when there is no social reason to do so. Attention leaks are unintentional because the conscious mind believes it is still neutral, while the subconscious has already assigned value. You'll notice timing shifts, such as responses that come faster than normal or pauses that stretch slightly longer because the mind is choosing words more carefully. You may see selective awareness where distractions are ignored except when they involve you, or sudden alertness when your name, movement, or absence is detected. These are not acts of politeness, they are priority signals. The brain tags what it repeatedly thinks about as relevant, and relevance sharpens perception. Another leak appears through misplaced curiosity, where questions seem casual but probe personal rhythms, availability, or reactions because the imagination is gathering data to build scenarios. There is also overcorrection, moments of deliberate restraint that arrive right after unguarded interest slips out, creating a pattern of brief warmth followed by controlled distance. This push pull is not mixed signals. It is the conscious mind trying to regain authority over attention it no longer fully controls. Micro adjustments in posture, orientation, and vocal tone often occur before awareness catches up because the nervous system is responding to internal imagery rather than external conversation. People believe attraction starts with desire, but it actually starts with focus, and focus reveals itself long before intention is admitted. Once attention begins leaking, it becomes cyclical because every interaction reinforces the mental loop, deepening the internal narrative, increasing emotional rehearsal, and making the leaks more frequent, more precise, and harder to hide. The nervous system tells the truth faster than words ever will because it reacts before the conscious mind has time to edit, mask, or perform. When someone is thinking about you repeatedly, their body begins responding to your presence as a stimulus, not a choice. Heart rate subtly shifts, breathing changes rhythm, and muscle tension adjusts without permission. These reactions are automatic because fantasy activates the same neural pathways as real experience, which means the body starts preparing for interaction even when nothing is happening. This is why you'll notice small signs of activation such as restless hands, sudden stillness, changes in blink rate, or a slight tightening of the jaw followed by relaxation. The nervous system oscillates between approach and self control, creating visible microconflict. One moment there is openness, leaning in, exposed posture, relaxed facial muscles, and the next moment there is correction, crossed limbs, measured tone, controlled expression. That fluctuation isn't moodiness, it's regulation. When the mind replays someone often, the nervous system begins to anticipate them, and anticipation creates readiness. Readiness is difficult to hide. Vocal tone may soften or drop slightly, pacing may slow down, or speech may momentarily stumble because the brain is allocating more processing power than the situation requires. There is also a noticeable mismatch between content and delivery, where neutral words are paired with heightened physiological response. The body is reacting to the internal image, not the external conversation. Another tell is recovery time. When interaction ends, the nervous system doesn't immediately return to baseline. There may be lingering tension, sudden quiet, or delayed composure because the internal simulation continues even after you're gone. This is why reactions sometimes seem disproportionate to the moment. The conscious mind believes it's in control, but the nervous system already decided that you matter. People can lie with language, but they struggle to fake regulation consistently. The more someone thinks about you, the more their body betrays investment through timing, intensity, and inconsistency. These signals are fast, subtle, and honest because they originate below awareness. And once you learn to observe them, they become impossible to ignore. Repeated proximity is rarely accidental because the mind naturally reduces distance to what it finds familiar, safe, and mentally rewarding. When someone is thinking about you often, the imagination creates comfort before reality does, and the body follows that imagined comfort by seeking physical or situational closeness. This doesn't show up as obvious pursuit, but as engineered coincidence. Paths cross more often than probability allows. Seating choices subtly change. Timing begins to align in ways that feel casual but repeat too consistently to be random. Proximity becomes a low-risk way to maintain connection without exposing intent, because being near you satisfies the nervous system while preserving plausible deniability. The brain justifies this behavior with harmless logic, but the pattern reveals the truth. Another layer appears in how distance is managed. There is an awareness of your location even when attention seems elsewhere, a tendency to orbit rather than approach directly, staying within conversational reach without demanding engagement. This allows observation, regulation, and rehearsal all at once. Being nearby gives the imagination fresh input, reinforcing the internal narrative that keeps replaying. You may also notice micro adjustments in space, such as angling the body toward you, matching your movement pace, or subtly repositioning to remain in your visual field. These shifts are automatic and occur faster than conscious decision making. Proximity also shows up digitally through presence in shared spaces, timing overlaps, or unnecessary check-ins that serve no functional purpose except maintaining contact. Importantly, this behavior isn't driven by confidence but by familiarity seeking. The mind prefers what it already rehearses, and fantasy creates familiarity without experience. That familiarity lowers internal resistance to closeness, even while conscious restraint remains. This is why proximity often increases before clarity. The person isn't trying to make a move, they're trying to stay connected to the mental loop. Distance feels like loss, even when nothing has been claimed. Over time, this repeated closeness becomes self-reinforcing because each moment near you strengthens comfort, heightens anticipation, and deepens investment. When proximity keeps repeating without clear reason, it's not coincidence. It's the physical echo of someone who already spends time with you in their head. Memory hooks form when someone emotionally rehearses you, because the brain does not store neutral information with the same strength as emotionally charged material. When a person repeatedly imagines interactions with you, the mind begins attaching emotion to small, otherwise insignificant details, turning them into anchors that automatically trigger recall. This is why they remember things they had no logical reason to remember, such as the exact wording you used once, a minor preference you mentioned in passing, or the timing of an event that involved you. These memories are not stored deliberately. They are encoded through repetition and emotional tagging. Emotional rehearsal strengthens neural pathways, making recall faster and more vivid, often surprising even the person experiencing it. You'll notice this when references appear that seem oddly specific or when past moments are brought up without prompting, sometimes framed casually to hide how much they stood out. Another sign is temporal distortion, where interactions with you feel longer, shorter, or more intense than they objectively were, because the brain has replayed them so many times that memory blends with imagination. Memory hooks also surface through anticipation, where someone reacts not just to what you say, but to what they expect you to say, revealing that conversations have already happened internally. The mind fills gaps with imagined continuity, creating a sense of familiarity that exceeds actual experience. This can also produce emotional leakage, where reactions feel disproportionate to the moment because they're tied to stored emotional meaning rather than present context. Even silence can become a hook, remembered not as absence but as significance. These memory anchors make you easier to think about and harder to forget, which reinforces the loop of fantasy. Each recall strengthens the next, making thoughts about you more automatic and intrusive. Over time, this process lowers emotional defenses because what is familiar feels safe, even when it is unclaimed. The person may not consciously realize why you occupy mental space so easily, only that your presence feels weighted. Memory hooks are powerful because they bypass logic, embedding you into the emotional filing system of the mind, where relevance is decided without permission. Self-regulation drops around people we mentally revisit because the brain allocates control based on perceived importance. And when someone occupies repeated mental space, emotional discipline quietly weakens. Regulation requires energy, and the mind unconsciously relaxes its grip around what it values or feels drawn to, especially when imagination has already normalized intimacy. This doesn't mean obvious loss of control. It shows up as small, uncharacteristic slips that contrast with otherwise composed behavior. You might notice reactions that are slightly more expressive, humor that lands a bit sharper or softer than intended, or moments where composure breaks and is quickly repaired. These micro failures reveal that emotional resources are being redirected inward. When someone fantasizes, their internal image of you carries emotional charge, and that charge bleeds into real interactions, making it harder to maintain the same neutral baseline they show others. Another sign is selective honesty, where guarded people unexpectedly reveal personal details, then subtly pull back, as if surprised by their own openness. This isn't calculated vulnerability. It's a lapse caused by lowered internal filters. Regulation also drops in timing, such as faster replies, delayed disengagement, or hesitation at goodbyes, because the mind resists closing the loop. There may be overinvestment in how they're perceived by you, leading to brief anxiety or overthinking that doesn't appear in other interactions. This creates a paradox where confidence and nervousness coexist. producing inconsistency that feels human rather than strategic. Even physical regulation shifts, with posture softening, facial expressions lingering longer, or mirroring occurring without awareness. These changes happen because the nervous system is prioritizing connection over control. Importantly, the drop in regulation is situational, not global, which is why it stands out. The same person remains disciplined elsewhere but becomes slightly less predictable around you. Fantasy erodes distance before reality does, and distance is what regulation depends on. When that distance collapses internally, behavior follows. These subtle cracks aren't weakness. They are indicators of mental investment that has progressed beyond curiosity and into repeated emotional engagement that the conscious mind has not fully acknowledged yet. Micro investment behaviors signal imagined futures because the mind does not invest in what it does not see continuing. When someone repeatedly thinks about you, their brain begins projecting forward, quietly testing scenarios, outcomes, and roles, and those projections create small acts of investment that seem unnecessary in the present moment. These behaviors are low-risk contributions that only make sense if the relationship is being mentally extended beyond now. You may notice effort placed into things that offer no immediate return, such as remembering schedules, adjusting plans, offering help that wasn't requested, or creating convenience for you without framing it as a favor. These actions are not grand gestures because fantasy is private. Instead, they are subtle deposits that make future closeness easier. Another signal appears in protective behaviors, where someone shows concern for your comfort, reputation, or emotional state in ways that exceed social obligation. Protection implies ownership at the psychological level, even if it's never verbalized. Micro investments also show up in consistency, where contact is maintained even when there is no clear reason, because continuity supports the imagined future the mind is rehearsing. The brain prefers momentum when it's projecting forward, and breaking contact feels like disrupting a narrative already in progress. There is also pre-approval behavior, where someone seeks your opinion, agreement, or reaction before making unrelated decisions, subtly positioning you as a reference point. This reveals that your presence has been integrated into their internal decision-making process. These investments often come with plausible explanations because the conscious mind needs cover for actions driven by subconscious projection. Importantly, the size of the investment doesn't matter, the direction does. Each small act reinforces the idea that you are part of what comes next. Over time, these micro investments compound, increasing emotional stake and internal attachment. The person may not label this as desire or intention, but the behavior reveals it clearly. When someone starts investing before there is anything to invest in, it means the future already exists in their imagination, and you are in it. Curiosity escalates into monitoring patterns because the mind naturally tracks what it is emotionally invested in, and repeated thought turns interest into quiet surveillance. This isn't obsession and it isn't control, it's orientation. When someone can't stop thinking about you, their brain begins looking for predictability because predictability reduces uncertainty in imagined futures. That drive for predictability shows up as attention to your routines, moods, availability, and shifts in behavior over time. They start noticing patterns they have no practical reason to notice, such as when you're most responsive, how your energy changes, or what interrupts your presence. Questions become indirect and strategically casual, designed to gather information without revealing intent. Even silence becomes data, interpreted rather than ignored. Monitoring also happens passively, through awareness rather than action. They register your entrances and exits, your absences, and your changes in tone, often without realizing they're doing it. This tracking creates internal predictions, which then influence emotional response. If your behavior matches expectation, there is calm. If it deviates, there is subtle tension or curiosity.